Let's kick things off with a fascinating question. What actually happens when you just stop being available to everyone all the time? We're going to dive into how pulling back a little, seen through the eyes of the psychologist Carl Jung, can totally transform your energy, your relationships, and yeah, maybe even your whole life. But first, let's just start with a feeling I bet you know all too well. Have you ever gotten to the end of the day and just felt completely wiped out? Not because you ran a marathon, but because you were emotionally on for every single person who needed you. Well, that feeling, that's not just you being tired. It's a symptom of something much, much deeper. And this gets us right to the heart of it, a truth that might feel a little uncomfortable at first. We're taught that being constantly available is a good thing, that it makes you a kind person. But the idea here is that when you take it to the extreme, it stops being a virtue and becomes a kind of prison that you build for yourself, brick by brick. So, how do we break out of that prison? We're going to walk through 5 key ideas. We'll start by looking at the trap itself, then we'll talk about the psychic energy it's costing you, we'll get into the manipulation it invites, discover the incredible power of silence, and finally, see how this whole journey leads you back to your true self. Okay, first up, the availability trap. This is really all about how society, and even our own instincts, can kind of trick us into this state of being constantly and predictably on call for everyone else. So, what's at the root of this? Well, Jung had this concept called the persona. You can think of it as the social mask we all put on. We want people to like us, to think we're dependable, right? So we wear the mask of the always available friend or colleague. We find ourselves saying yes even when our whole body is screaming no, just to keep up this image. And this, right here, is the consequence. When you always say yes, when you always text back in 2 seconds flat, you stop being seen as a person with your own needs. You become predictable. And because you're predictable, you become a tool. People start treating you like an emotional emergency button. They press it when they need a boost, and then they put you right back on the shelf until next time. So what's the real cost of being stuck in this trap? It's not just about your time. It's about something way more valuable, your psychic energy. Think of it like the battery pack for your soul. For Jung, your mind isn't just a thinking machine, it's an energy system. Every text you reply to, every small worry you entertain, every pointless argument you get into, it all drains that psychic energy. And here's the most important part. That energy is finite. It can, and it absolutely does, run out. So where is it all going? Well, we basically pour this precious resource into these black holes without even thinking about it. We get provoked into reacting on impulse, we waste energy defending ourselves from some tiny criticism, we get sucked into arguments that go nowhere, and, this is a huge one, we burn ourselves out trying to please people who, let's be honest, don't really value us in the first place. This famous quote from Jung just nails why this is such a vicious cycle. The more you fight and push back against these little energy drains, the more power you actually give them. The very act of reacting and resisting becomes its own energy leak. You get more and more tangled up. And this constant state of being drained and reactive, well, it leads us into some darker territory. When you're running on empty, you become vulnerable. And that's how being too available can open the door to the manipulation game. The key concept we need to understand here is another of Jung's big ideas, projection. This is what happens when people unconsciously take their own unresolved problems, their own insecurities, their own needs, and they cast them onto you. And if you're the always agreeable, always available person, you become the perfect blank screen for their projections. Now you have to get this. Manipulation isn't always some big evil plot. A lot of the time, it's way more subtle. It's simply about someone knowing exactly which buttons to push to get the reaction they want from you. Your guilt, your anger, your need to be the hero. It all becomes part of their unconscious game. But here's the beautiful part. What happens when the puppet just cuts its own strings? When you make a conscious choice not to react, when you offer silence instead of a 5-paragraph explanation, the entire dynamic just shatters. The game can't continue because it needed you to play your part. Okay, so how do we actually do that? This brings us to the solution, the antidote to all of this, reclaiming your power through the strategic, conscious use of silence. Look, this isn't about being passive or giving up. It's about taking back control. The key is to create a pause. That little space between the trigger and your response, that's where all your power is. You can decide to step away from a discussion that's turning into chaos. And you can just say no, as a complete sentence. No long apologetic explanation required. I love this quote from the source because it reframes the whole idea so perfectly. Choosing when to speak and when to be silent isn't about being cold or rude. It's a sign of maturity. It's you finally understanding that your energy is precious, and you get to decide who is worthy of that investment. And when you start making those wise investments with your energy, it leads you to the final, and honestly the most profound destination on this map, the journey of becoming your true self. For this, Jung had a special name, individuation. So what is individuation? It's really the whole point of the journey. It's about taking off the social masks, stepping out from under the projections of others, and letting go of that constant need for approval, so you can finally figure out who you are at your core. And that process, it requires space, it requires silence, it requires you to tune out all the external noise so you can finally hear your own voice. I mean, just look at this shift. It's a total transformation. You go from being a reactor, just getting bounced around by everyone else's demands, to becoming a creator of your own life. You go from predictable to sovereign, from drained and desperate for approval to centered and self-respecting. This is what's on the table. Now, we have to be honest here. This path is not easy. When you stop playing the part that other people wrote for you, some of them are not going to like it. They might even fall away. You will probably lose some people, but the reward for that loss is infinitely greater. You find yourself. And all of this leaves us with one last, really powerful question to sit with. This whole journey takes courage. It takes the courage to risk disappointing other people in the service of your own truth. So the question is, are you ready to be misunderstood in order to finally